Hey everybody, it's Gomedex and welcome back to some more magic related content. Of course, this video is going to be quite different. As you can see, I have actual physical paper cards. I have a hand. This is weird. I'm definitely not used to doing paper videos anymore, but I used to do like a weekly draft recap back when F&M was still a thing for a little while, and that was quite fun. So lately I did actually get to play with paper magic cards. Did not play in person. I did play in the Time Spiral Remastered release party that Channel Fireball did online via Spell Table. And I had a really good time. I definitely recommend it if you want to play some paper magic during the set releases. If they do it for later sets, I'd absolutely recommend it for that. And Time Spiral here was a really fun set to get to play with. Of course, the original Time Spiral did come out before I started playing the game, but a lot of the cards are really powerful, interesting, and classic stuff. So I had heard of a lot of the cards, so I even have some nostalgia for the set, even though I literally never played it before. Like Riftwing Cloudskate here is a card that's definitely seen play in some cubes and is kind of an all-star that I know about. Empty the Warrens here, the Storm mechanic, obviously a classic. So really cool stuff in Time Spiral Remastered. I definitely recommend the set if you can get your hands on it, but let's just get into the deck review here. This is the sealed deck that I ended up playing out of my sealed pool. I actually went 4 wins and 0 losses, although I was playing entirely in the challenge queues, which is like the casual queues where we're trying to do just silly fun things. And I was going a lot for trying to storm off and get those kind of challenges done. Getting like a bunch of creature tokens on the board, stuff like that. Anyways, this is kind of a blue-red tempo deck. We're trying to slow our opponent down with cards like Riftwing Cloudskate, our early removal, like Dead and Gone, and then if we survive until the late game slowing them down with those kind of cards, we either just finish them off with flyers like Riftwing Cloudskate, Spiketail Drakeling, Crooklaw Transmuter, a lot of flyers in this deck, or alternatively, we could slow them down long enough to attempt to storm off with Empty the Warrens. Definitely the funnest way to attempt to end the game. And the way that we could storm off with Empty the Warrens is with a card like Grinning Ignis here. We got 2 copies of this. 3 mana for a 2/2. You spend 1 mana to put it back into your hand and get the full 3 back. So if you have this on your board, then on the turn you want to storm off, you basically get to just spend 1 red mana as many times as you want to add 1 to your storm count. Storm, of course, a mechanic that allows you to copy the spell for each spell you cast before it this turn. So your storm count is the amount of spells you've cast this turn. With Grinning Ignis and like 8 mana on board, if this is just sitting there, you could just spend 4 mana. Like, you just say, alright, I'll spend 1 mana to pick it up, get its mana cost, play it again. Spend a mana to do it again, spend a mana to do it again, spend a mana to do it again. Bam, you've cast 4 spells for 4 mana. And then you could just be like, empty the Warrens for 5. But it's actually even better than that, actually, because of the fact that you get all the mana back out of it. You could, if you had 8 lands total, I gotta do the math here. If it's already on your board and you have 8 lands total, you can cast it 4 times for just 4 red, and then you still have 4 mana untapped, and you have this on your board. So you could do it a 5th time, then you have 3 mana untapped. Do it a 6th time, you have 2 mana untapped, spend 1 of that mana to pick it up, and then you get the 3 mana out of this. You have the 3 mana and your 1 last land, use that to cast Empty the Warrens. So with 8 lands out, you're actually casting Empty the Warrens with 6 copies of it. So you get the initial Empty the Warrens and 6 extra copies. That would be 7. That'd be 14 1/1 goblins if you have 8 lands out and Grinning Ignis out. Kind of complex math to do with a lot of it, because there's even hands where you'll have a Grinning Ignis out, and then you want to cast something cheap like a Dead to just randomly kill one of their creatures and add 1 to your storm count, or a Ponder to just draw a card, add to your storm count. So Storm is a pretty complex mechanic, but it is really fun to play around with, attempting to just go crazy with Empty the Warrens. And that was actually the way that I won like 3 out of the 4 games. The only other way I won games was just by attacking in with flyers while slowing my opponent down. So anyways, that's the general deck idea. I'll go ahead and go through all of the cards here just to show off all of the cool stuff in the set and just talk about my opinions on everything. Shivan Sandmage, one of the weaker cards. It has Suspend. Suspend, for those who don't know, there is the reminder text here on the Cloudwing Skate. You basically get to pay a reduced mana cost for it and choose to spend time to cast it rather than mana. So by spending 2 mana to suspend this, you know you get to cast it 3 turns from now, and when you do cast it, it has haste. With the Shivan Sandmage, you do that for 1 red, and its mechanic works very heavily with suspended cards, either making other suspended cards take longer to play or come out faster, depending on when you get it. This card was not that great. I mean, we were basically just playing it as a 4-mana 3/2. I never got to do anything with its fancy abilities, so maybe I just drew it at weird times, but definitely not as interesting or as exciting as I hoped it would be. The Dead and Gones were absolutely fantastic, my lord. Frostbite, obviously in Call Time Limited recently, is already pretty solid. 1 mana for an instant to do 2 to a creature. This is that with the added versatility of being able to bounce something in a red deck. It's kind of insane. Of course, I am blue-red, so my opponent is already expecting bounce spells just because I'm in blue. But yeah, this was absolutely phenomenal. Dead and Gone. And obviously, when you're bouncing something with Gone, you can kill tokens permanently. And there are some random, just big tokens that are available in Time Spiral because there are all kinds of tokens in the set. So Dead and Gone, absolutely fantastic. Was really nice to have 2 of those. Ponder, of course, a really nice old bordered card to open up in my booster packs. But other than that, just a solid draw spell for limited. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put them back in any order, and you can shuffle if you want, if all your cards suck, and then you draw a card. So definitely a solid draw spell there for only 1. At 2 mana, we have the double Riftwing Cloudscape, probably the best card in the deck. Obviously, as I said before, there are a lot of cubes that would run this card just because it is pretty efficient, pretty great flying tempo creature. Slowing your opponent down, getting an evasive threat, just absolutely great stuff. Suspended or hardcast for 5 mana, it's a fine card. Dreamstalker was alright. Not as cool as I would hope it would be, but it was fine. The idea behind Dreamstalker in this deck is that I do have some good enter the battlefield effects. Obviously on like Cloudskate, I could redo that to bounce another one of my opponent's cards. On Sandmage, I could mess with their suspended cards again. And alternatively, I could bounce the Dreamstalker itself to also contribute to my storm count for Empty the Warrens. So if I don't have any Grinning Ignises, at least I could just cast Dreamstalker and keep bouncing itself a couple times, but that does cost 2 mana every time I do it, so a much less efficient way to add to the storm count than Grinning Ignis would be, but a way nonetheless. And then we have Sting Scourger. This card was really fun, obviously working well with the blue-red tempo theme here, bouncing my opponent's card. Really strange card for red, but that is what is so cool about Time Spiral. They really played around with tons and tons of interesting mechanics, messing around with the color pie, just doing all kinds of strange stuff you don't see very often. So the 2 mana Goblin Warrior that returns an opposing threat, very strange card, but definitely a good one all around. Of course, this does have a pretty high echo cost. If you want to keep it on the field, you have to pay that cost during your next upkeep, or it will just die. But you only have to pay the echo cost once. So definitely not that bad. I've definitely cast this both ways, where I've played it, bounced my opponent's threat, and then paid the echo cost, and I've also cast it just to bounce their threat and then let it die the next turn so I could cast other things. So nice and versatile that way too. You don't have to pay the echo cost. Sometimes you just want to bounce one of their things. So at 2 mana here, we have an absolutely fantastic card. I only got to cast this once, but when I cast it, it was incredible. Rough and Tumble. Really, really nice split card. 2 mana to do 2 damage to each creature without flying, or 6 mana to do 6 damage to each creature with flying. So it's whatever you need at the time. In my deck, with the amount of flyers I had, the best thing I did with this was easily casting a Rough in a game after my opponent went off with their own Empty the Warrens. So they had goblins everywhere. Both of us had other creatures on board. They had like some random 2/2s, 3/2s, that kind of thing alongside stuff. But all of the creatures I had on board was like a Riftwing Cloud Skate, a Crook Claw Transmuter, and like a Storm Cloud Djinn, just some random flyers. So casting Rough just wiped their entire board without killing any of my stuff. One-sided Wrath in that way. It was absolutely fantastic. So great card there. Never cast Tumble because I never played against an opponent with a ton of flyers, and I only really cast it one time. Grinning Ignis, we already went over this, just a Storm enabler. It's also nice when you're stuck on mana. If you only have 3 lands out and you get a Grinning Ignis, this helps you cast your higher mana spells, which came in handy multiple times. I really like this card in a Storm kind of deck because it does more than just assist your Storm. There were several games where I was stuck on 3 mana, but because I had Grinning Ignis that I'd cast with my 3 mana, the next turn I could then just return Grinning Ignis, and all of a sudden I paid 1 mana to return it, which means I still have 2 mana untapped. So I have 2 mana untapped plus that 3 mana that it adds, so I have 5 mana total, enough to cast anything in my deck, even if I'm only stuck on 3 lands. So Grinning Ignis, very, very nice card in that sense. Reiterate was probably the weakest card in the whole deck. I literally never cast this. So probably my least favorite card in the deck. It just always ended up being too much mana or too much of a burden to hold this up when I was trying to tap out for other things or trying to tap out for Storm, stuff like that. So Reiterate didn't really work well in this deck, although it does look like a fun card in theory. In theory, if you have this in the late game, because it has buyback, you can spend the buyback cost to put it back into your hand when it resolves. So you can keep casting this and never letting it go to your graveyard. So the idea is, if you have a board stall situation, you're in the late game, each player's just top decking. If you have the 6 mana up, all of a sudden, anytime they draw an instant or sorcery, you can just cast it as well for 6, which is cool. Alternatively, of course, it does work well with suspend instants and sorceries, but I only had the 1 Rift Bolt, never got that combo together. So ideally it's like you suspend it, and then when you're casting this for free, you'll have the extra mana to do the copy of it. But yeah, I literally never cast Reiterate, just never had it at the right kind of time, so don't know about the Reiterate here. Rift Bolt was fantastic. Obviously 3 damage for 3 mana is going to be great in Limited, just killing anything, and you can even suspend it for 1 and do it for only 1 mana, and it only suspends for 1 turn, so you can often just suspend it instead if you don't have the mana. And now Orcish Cannonade. This card was pretty solid. I only cast this once, but the fact that you draw a card off of this makes me feel like it's very worth the 3 damage to you. It only does 2 damage, so it is a lot more mana than Dead is, doing 2 damage for only 1, but allowing you to draw a card makes me feel this is really solid. Obviously the drawback is 3 damage to you, but 3 mana, 2 to any target, draw a card would be very, very good if it didn't do 3 to you, so I'm certainly fine with the drawback. It did fine stuff. Similar to Dead, just a bit slower. Then we have Crook Claw Transmuter. This card was really fun. I got to flash this in when my opponent was attacking with a 1/1, and I got to change its own power and toughness to make it a 1/3, and then block their 1/1 and kill it without losing my flyer. And then, of course, every turn from that point on, this was just hitting them for 3 a turn with its evasiveness, so Crook Claw Transmuter definitely performed well. Very fun card there. It can do a lot of interesting things, but that was the best thing it did for me. If your opponent has a 0 power creature, you can swap their power and toughness, and all of a sudden that's a 0 toughness creature, and it just automatically dies. Primal Plasma. This card is fun because you can choose whatever you need at the time when you cast it. You make it a 3/3 or a 2/2 flyer or a 1/6 defender, whatever you're looking for at the time. And with the amount of bounce spells that my deck has, pretty much most of my bounce spells can return our permanents, not just our opponents. So we could bounce it with a Cloud Skate or bounce it with a Dreamstalker if we need to set it on a different mode. Like if we played it as a 1/6 defender, and all of a sudden now we've cast a Rough, and they don't have creatures anymore, we don't need to block anything, we could potentially top deck something that lets us bounce it, and then replay it as something we could actually use at the time. So this card was pretty fun. Definitely not like the craziest card ever. It's not that great for its mana cost. The real value on this card is the fact that you get 3 options for that cost. So most of the time I was just playing this as a 4 mana 2/2 flyer, which is obviously a bit much for a 2/2 flyer, but it's the fact that you have the option of any of those 3 things that makes that card solid. The 2 Empty the Warrens, our biggest win condition. Not much to say here. Very fun to try to storm off, cast a bunch of spells in one turn, and finish them off with some goblin tokens. So that was great. This was getting me a lot of challenges as well. The time I was playing, there was a challenge for putting a bunch of creature tokens on the board, and that certainly helped with that. And then Foresee is a very nice draw spell. If you've been playing War of the Spark Limited, you should know that for sure. It's Tamiyo's Epiphany. Before Tamiyo's Epiphany was a thing. 4 mana to scry 4, then draw 2. Just a fantastic draw spell all around. And at 5 mana... Ooh, I missed some 3 mana cards. We'll have to go back to those. Those are very solid. I don't remember why I pulled them over. Oh, because the Grinning Ignises. So yeah, we'll look at those last. At 5 mana, we have Stormcloud Djinn. This was pretty solid. It basically always drew a removal spell, so I never got to actually hit somebody with it, but the fact that it was always drawing a removal spell meant it was definitely a game-winning threat. Big old flyer. Obviously can only block flyers, so it's only good on the aggressive, but it is a definite game ender with that fire-breathing ability, giving it additional power as well. Can try to kill your opponent real quickly. And then Reckless Worm. This was just nice because I didn't have any other creatures that were really big at all, so just having a 4/4 was nice so that I'd have something moderately, like, decently sized. I think my worst matchup would be against green decks with just big creatures, although that is what all the bounce spells and stuff would be very good against. So maybe not. That would be where I'd be just kind of the most worried, though. Anyways, a couple cards we missed at 3 mana. Sheeper Parasite was an absolute house. 3 mana to morph this out as a face-down 2/2, and then you can spend 3 mana to flip it up. When you flip it up, target creature gets +2, -2, or -2, +2 till end of turn. This was always giving +2, -2, and just killing a 2 toughness or less creature, and every time you did that, it just feels fantastic. A creature and a removal spell all in one, that's of course always a good thing. A comparison in recent draft formats would be something like Basalt Ravager. That's a nice 4/2 body that also kills one of your opponent's creatures. Very similar feel to that kind of card. You always feel great, and you're up a card when you get to kill something and keep your creature on the board. So Shaper Parasite, absolutely phenomenal. And then the Spiketail Drakeling was very good as well, giving us another evasive threat for our flying theme. And this also makes it hard for your opponent to try to just tap out for their bomb, because you get to sacrifice this to counter that spell unless they pay 2. And the thing about it is, because you have to sacrifice a 2/2 flyer to counter their spell, they actually, like, kind of built in a way for you to want to hold this unless they're playing their bomb. It's really hard for your opponent to draw out your counter spell for a weaker spell, because if their spell is weaker than a 2/2 flyer, you're just never going to sacrifice this because you'd rather keep your 2/2 flyer. So it's kind of a built-in way to make sure you hold on to your mana leak until it's either making them wait 2 extra turns to play their best card, or it's going to actually get their best card. So that was very good as well. And in the mana base, pretty basic stuff. I believe 9 mountains and 8 blue sources. However, one of those blue sources, Teleria West, is a much fancier card, although in Limited doesn't really do anything. I just thought I'd show off with it. It is a foil Teleria West that we opened up, which is pretty cool. This card used to be uncommon, so kind of unfortunate to open an uncommon as your rare. At least I think it was. It definitely looks like an uncommon to me. But yeah, it's foil. The Transmute allows you to spend that cost, discard it, search your library for a card with converted mana cost 0, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So in our deck, this is just a island that could potentially cycle for a mountain if we need double red for some reason. Would be the most likely situation. We're not likely to keep a hand that's just mono blue. But I could see a hand where we've only drawn 1 red source. Maybe we have Reiterate or Orcish Cannonade in hand, and then we draw Teleria West. We can just discard this to draw a mountain instead. So potentially can do something there, although I never did transmute the card, just played it to be a little fancy there. So there was the deck. The event was very fun. I highly recommend it if they do it again for Strixhaven. Then I would be very interested in doing this again. And I think you should all try it out. It was a very fun time. I was in Team Jaya. The team leaders on Team Jaya were Voxy, Ashlyn Rose, Olivia Goldberg Hicks. Those are all the ones that I know of that I was interested in. Obviously, Ashlyn and Olivia, great cosplayers, and Voxy, one of my favorite streamers, definitely the most entertaining streamer in my opinion that I watch. So yeah, it was a fun time all around, and being able to actually play Time Spiral Remastered was really nice. That was one of the saddest moments for me. With Commander Legends, was realizing that set was really cool, and the only way you could play it was on Magic Online. And playing Commander on Magic Online isn't super ideal because, you know, you have to wait for all the triggers and stuff, and it just leads to very slow, very grindy games. So Commander Legends, I thought, was a phenomenal set, and it was just released at an inopportune time, obviously, to where it doesn't get any time to shine because it's not on Arena, which is really like the premier way to play right now, in my opinion. And Time Spiral Remastered not being on Arena as well meant there was no way I was going to play this because I'm not going to play Magic Online for it, unless they did this online release party like they did. So really happy that they did that. That was really cool. And it was a great set to have that community kind of event for, because everyone was super excited about the old border cards, the great cards in the set in general. And it was just great time to hang out for that. And on that note, I would like to show you the other cards that I opened up, because I opened up some cool stuff, but not stuff you can really play in Limited, so I did want to show that off. So Manifold Key here is pretty awesome, getting the old border Manifold Key. This is a card, I already have a ton of copies of this because I do make a lot of artifact-based commander decks, and this is a staple in all of them, so really cool to get the old bordered one if I play a commander deck with a lot of old school cards that is artifact-based. Then that is going to go right in there. The tokens in the set look really cool. I really like the updated tokens that they've done where they are all full art. And seeing some old school kind of artwork, some Time Spiral kind of artwork on these tokens is really cool. Obviously my soldier's a little crimped at the top. Unfortunate, but it is a token, so no big deal. Metallic Sliver, like look at this old school style artwork just fully fleshed out all over the card for the tokens is so good. And then an ape token, that is artwork we've already seen. And this knight token, like such interesting artwork. Intricate stuff, very cool. Cloud Sprite, and now we're on to showing off more of the cool pulls. Obviously, Sliver Legion's a huge one. I've never played a Sliver deck before, so I'm not particularly interested in this card, but it is a great pull financially and a great pull for Commander. Maybe I'll try a Sliver deck one time, but likely this is just going to get traded off for other Commander cards that I'm actually interested in. Foil Elvish Mystic in the old border is really nice. The old border foil is really cool because they give us the old foil swoosh, and they're in the old style to where everything is foil except the artwork. So they are like reverse foils. So really cool stuff. Really beautiful card. Don't know how much this is actually worth, but it might be worth a little bit because this is kind of the fanciest version of Elvish Mystic you could possibly get, I think. Maybe they've done a full art or something, because Elvish Mystic, obviously, Llanowar Elf style effect, something that they have reprinted a lot. Old Bordered Abrupt Decay is really cool. This is my first Abrupt Decay ever. I don't play any formats where I'd really use this, like maybe in Commander, but Commander is a lot more about the big, splashy plays, at least in my play groups, so Abrupt Decay not as good as like Assassin's Trophy for a Golgari removal spell in Commander, and I don't have that either, so maybe I'll try to trade an Old Bordered Abrupt Decay up into an Assassin's Trophy. I don't actually know how much either of the cards costs, but we'll see. Arcades, the Strategist. I do have an Arcades Commander deck using the M20, M19, I don't remember, version of Arcades, so getting an old border one is really cool. I'm definitely going to consider running that, because that is a fancy, cool-looking commander to have. And then just our other rares, definitely not as good as that stuff. That was like the cream of the crop. They're very cool things. We have Miri the Cursed and Time of Need, another old border card. This one from Kamigawa. I do have the original version of this. Pretty fun card for Commander if you're running a deck that has a lot of legendaries in it. Flagstones of Trocaire is another rare. Potentially, if you're playing like Armageddon and stuff, you're grabbing a land after your stuff dies. And then Summoner's Pact. Don't have anything that could really use that. And Intangible Virtue, another old border card. And Tombstalker, our final rare. So again, as I said before, I think this event all in all was very cool, very fun stuff, and I highly recommend it if they do it again for Strixhaven. Certainly check it out. A little unfortunate that Time Spiral is really hard to find. They did not print a lot of it because it is kind of testing the waters for set remasters, and obviously it sold very well. There is a lot of scarcity and scalping going on now, unfortunately, so it was a little hard to get your hands on these cards. Luckily for me, I do work at a pretty much big box retail store, so I just when I got off work the day that the set came out, I immediately went to the card aisle. There were already only like 10 packs left. I got my 6 packs to do sealed and got out of there, so got pretty lucky to be able to pick these up. But I had a great time, and highly recommend it if they do it again for Strixhaven. As I've been saying over and over again, this set was really cool, and it was awesome to actually get to play around with it a bit. So yeah, that is going to end today's video. Obviously not a Magic Arena video, so I would not be surprised if it's not particularly popular, but I did definitely want to talk about what I was doing over the weekend. I was just playing in this and working, obviously, but that's what my free time was devoted to this weekend, so that is why there were no videos this weekend. But I had a really good time, so I was really happy to play this, and I definitely wanted to talk it up because it was a very cool time all around. So thank you all very much if you did watch this video. I know I mostly make Magic Arena videos, so I would not be surprised if most of you are not particularly interested in this. But if you are, if you play Paper Magic occasionally, if you play Commander, Time Spiral Remastered is a really cool set if you can get your hands on some of those cards to play some sealed or pre-release like draft kind of stuff with either your friends, locally if you're in an area where you can do that, or over spell table with anybody you can find. So thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic related content. I was going to say Magic Arena content, but technically today's video is not Magic Arena related, so I should just say Magic content, but I will be right back to Arena as soon as possible. So I'll see you all then.